Well, welcome, Geoff, to our first Coffee with Kenny of 2026. Thank you for coming in. I just wanted to introduce you to all of our viewers and to the state. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the political piece. And, you know, you're a candidate for governor. Tell us about Geoff and let the members know who you are.
Well, thanks for the invitation, and thanks for the free cup of coffee, too. This is really Coffee with Kenny, for sure. Yeah, Geoff Duncan, I've got an interesting story. My first job out of college, out of Georgia Tech, was playing professional baseball. Got drafted by the Florida Marlins in 1996. My kids say that's like a long time ago. They're so old that the team name is now the Miami Marlins, not even the Florida Marlins. But playing professional baseball taught me a lot of grit and tenacity, things that I've carried with me everywhere I've gone. My wife and I got married. We dated in high school in Georgia Tech and got married right after I got drafted. So we grew up on the road our first 5 or 6 years of marriage. And my first job during baseball, during the off seasons, was in the construction industry. My father-in-law was a builder in North Atlanta. He built a couple houses a year, and I needed to get some work that was flexible, where I could still work out in the mornings and still throw bullpens in the afternoons to stay in shape for spring training. So I trimmed out garages, T111 paneling with chair crown mold and chair rail and base. It was miserable. I didn't have a very good set of tools, but the second year I came back after the season ended, I had a much better set of tools. I was a whole lot better at doing it.
That's awesome. So you were doing all of that while you were training in baseball.
Yeah. I mean, I was married. I had to support my wife, and we eventually kept playing baseball. Got released, had shoulder surgery, career ended. We started our first business, a marketing company, out of our house, and it kind of took off from there. But and now we've got 3 boys. We've got a 23-year-old. That went to the University of Georgia. Now he's in law school. We've got a 20-year-old who plays football at Georgia Tech, and we've got a 15-year-old freshman in high school who plays every sport under the sun. So yeah, we're living the good old-fashioned American dream.
That's awesome. So I mean, what that tells me is your work ethic. It's there. I mean, if you're getting up and you were training for baseball, you were going to work, working in construction, that work ethic's huge. You know, I feel like sometimes in today's times we're losing that work ethic with our younger generation. So that's awesome.
I had this little plaque that I carried with me, even on the road. I'd put it in my locker on the road. It says, "The harder you work, the luckier you get." And it really just was this instilled in me. Every lap you're running, every sprint you're running, every throw you're making, every push-up you're doing, the harder you work, it creates more opportunities. You don't know when those breaks are going to come. And so you just put in the work and show up every day and be on time and do what you can do.
Yeah, I like it. I love it. So talking about the politics side, in Georgia, the last time that we had a Democrat in office was Roy Barnes from 99 to 2003. It's been 23 years since a Democrat won governor here in Georgia. How do you combat that? Like, how can you change that? What are you doing to try to move into the direction to secure this win for us?
Yeah, and you're right. And, as I walk into rooms night after night after night and talk about that, it's been, so many years since Roy Barnes got sworn in for governor. And Democrats can say, well, it's because we've done this or we haven't done that. But the reality is it's just because Democrats haven't got enough votes. To win the governor's race in Georgia, you got to win more than the base. And so I'm building this coalition as a former Republican that's found a better way to do things, and now a proud Democrat. I'm building a coalition that is Democrats, independents, and this growing batch of disgusted Republicans that just can't make excuses for Donald Trump or MAGA anymore. They're just not willing to stand up and make those excuses.
Okay, that's awesome. I like it. So how important is skilled labor, not just labor? How important is skilled labor for Georgia's economy, for our economic growth? How important is skilled labor? Like us, our union guys, people that are going through pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, and then getting that final ticket as a journey person. What is so important about skilled labor in our economy?
Well, I think there's so many different, definitions to what that skilled labor is. It's somebody who's trained on that specific skill, but it's also somebody who is trained to be a safe worker, who's educated throughout the process, but also somebody who's career oriented. I think that's the greatest person to hire. When somebody shows up to work and they've got their retirement already in mind, they've got their family's benefits already in mind, they've got a safe workplace, representation. When they show up with that mindset every day to work, they're going to put in that extra effort. They're going to be much more productive. And to me, that's what really is the secret sauce to Georgia becoming the state we should become. You know, the world's looking at us. The world's seeing if they want to move their businesses here, if they want to expand here, and making sure that we have qualified workforce that's safe, that's ready to go, that's 21st century trained, is a huge asset for us, I think, as we continue to move forward. And we're never going to become the state that we should become if we're not embracing labor.
Awesome. We talked, I don't know if you want to share this or not, but we talked a couple months back, and it was a great idea you had. We had talked about just the economic growth in general in Georgia and how do you keep it moving forward, but how do you tie labor, organize labor in and bring labor to the table. And you had a really good plan that you were saying that you wanted to do about you would create the committee and elaborate on that, what you were telling me.
Yeah, look, there's no mystery. Organized labor has not been welcomed with open arms in the state of Georgia for nearly over 2 decades since Democrats were last in power in Georgia, and that's unfortunate, right? And I certainly have seen it from the other side. Early in my career, I was on the Republican side of the ticket, and I watched kind of this demonization of labor and this kind of ostracizing them from the process of being embedded in state government, being able to sit at the table and be able to bid on those projects, to be able to look at opportunities to expand their presence in Georgia. And so, as governor, I think the best way to lead is by example. And so opening up the doors to my administration to be able to embed labor into my administration so that when we're making those international sales pitches to attracting economic development opportunities, labor's with us. Labor's able to tell that story about how they will have qualified individuals to show up on those skilled workforce needs that these companies have, whether they're expanding manufacturing or whether they're expanding construction or data centers or you name it. We want to have labor embedded not only in the pitch but also in the administration, so that when we watch things coming through the General Assembly, a rogue bill coming in the Senate or the House, we're able to be educated and up to speed on a moment's notice. And that's my commitment. It's to not run from labor. I think if we actually get this right, I don't think it won't only be a tailwind for Georgia and labor, but I think it'll be a tailwind across the entire South. I think the rest of the South will see, hey, if we want to truly become a more sophisticated package and be more enticing to the international logos that are looking to move here, then we need to embrace labor also.
Yeah. And so I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you are a centrist and you can work both sides of the aisle. You get it. You got good common sense. I think you're a centrist, and I think that's something that is really needed in our country as a whole right now. Would you say that's a true statement, that you're in the middle? We know you're transitioning. You're not way over here ultra conservative. You're not way over here left, just so liberal. And I think that as a country, that's what we've gotten away from, and I feel like you're bringing that back. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to be recognized as an honest umpire, somebody who shows up to work every day ready to go, that's able to put the facts and the real information on the table and go make big decisions and make them to positively impact the most amount of Georgians as we possibly can. Campaigns have been won and lost by living in the extremes, living and dying in the extremes, far left and far right. But the reality is a majority of folks wake up and just are moderate-natured individuals. I think with some of the early traction that we've got, I know it is, a lot of the momentum that we've gotten is a majority of Georgians, Democrats, Independents, and this even batch of disgusted Republicans are more moderate-minded, and they're attracted to my approach. I think they're also attracted to the fact that the electability factor. I've got the absolute best chance to win. I can win this race. I will win this race. And I'll beat the Republican Burt Jones, who's running for governor and most likely is going to be the nominee because Donald Trump said so. And his dad gave him $10 million worth of lunch money to go run for governor. Mm-hmm. We'll beat him. And I think it's because a majority of folks don't want that style of leadership. They don't want those attacks on. Burt Jones tried to take over the Atlanta airport when I was lieutenant governor. I stopped him. He tried to create the city of Buckhead, which would have bankrupted the city of Atlanta. And he was a fake elector, right? Literally a fake elector who had to get pardoned and tried to usurp democracy. And I stopped him and stripped him of his chairmanship. So the list goes on. I'd like to beat him one more time. Yeah, that's awesome. That's exactly what we need. Speaking earlier, you had mentioned data centers and rogue bills coming out. There's a misconception that, well, speaking honestly, the public opinion for data centers right now is kind of changing, not in favor. But as building trades,
we understand the value of data centers and why you need them. One of the examples I like to use is the elderly, my in-laws, my parents. They get all of their data for their doctor's visits on their MyChart. You know where that data is stored? It's in a data center. So, I mean, data centers are something that we have to have. And recently, I had to testify for the Finance Committee for two bills that's going to come out. It's Senate Bill 408 and 410. I don't know if you've heard about them, but one's going to cut the tax breaks all the way out for the equipment that goes for the data centers. And then the other one is going to make it harder to get the certificates you have to get the tax credit. And when I was testifying, I told them, you know, this is something that we don't do very good as building trades. We don't tell our story enough because a lot of people still don't know who we are or what we do. But here at Atlanta, North Georgia Building Trades, we encompass almost 92 counties, from Stewart County all the way up to Dade County, where you go into Tennessee and then back into Georgia. There's data centers all through our jurisdiction. The misconception is they're talking about the water that these data centers consume. Now, like everything, you have advancements. Well, they're using closed loop systems now. Okay, so that's one thing. So we're not tapping in. They're not just using this endless supply of water. So I think the public needs to know that. And then they're also, the consumer is not being, our power rates are not increasing, us, me and you. It's the actual data center and their power agreements with the Georgia Power and Southern Company. They're working that deal out so ours don't increase. So there was a rate freeze, 3-year rate freeze for the Public Service Commission. So all these talking points, I was trying to point out in the finance, you're going to kill jobs. I mean, building trades wide, we're talking about 20 to 25,000 jobs. Last year, building trades worked 47 million man hours. 25 of them were in data centers. 25 million building trades wide were in data centers. So one of the things that I heard at the complaints is they were talking about after the data center's built, that there's not any jobs. There's no long-term jobs. Well, when you factor in your network, your IT, your security, your office personnel, your maintenance crews, depending on the size of the data center, there could be 100 to 150 jobs where people are going to work every day, drawing a check, working in these data centers. There's 138 data centers right now in Metro Atlanta with 27 different operators. That's another 20,000 jobs out there after they're built. So I say all that to say this. I hope and I think you're with us on the data centers. What's your opinion on that? Have you dug into it?
Oh yeah, no, I'm knee deep in understanding the issue. So there's so much misinformation flying around on all sides of the issue around data centers. I think that primarily what we have to remember is unless somebody's willing to take their cell phone and throw it in the trash can and never look at it again, that's the only way you could really stand up and say that we should never build data centers. I think the devil's in the details on how it happens, right? Making sure that the locals have all the control that they need. If they don't want to build one in a certain place because of noise or traffic or whatever the story is, then they need to have that flexibility to move that to the right spot, or just say no. If it's not a good fit for a community, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the water issue. I think there's so much innovation coming down the pipeline, pun intended. There's so much innovation, whether it be closed loop systems, waterless technologies, there's things coming on. Also, we're watching innovation happen at an exponential rate on energy efficient chips that are starting to come. I do think there's an opportunity to better message on how and make sure that communities aren't paying for those upgraded generation costs and transmission lines. But those jobs are real. Those construction jobs are real, and we certainly want them here to the best of our ability, making sure that they fit the ethos or the DNA of Georgia. And I do think there's a way to do that.
Cool. All right. So some folks in Georgia say that Georgia gives away too much in incentives. Others say the incentives are the reason the jobs are here in the first place. Where do you land on that perspective, and how do you make sure workers aren't the ones paying the price either way?
Yeah, it's certainly a balancing act, right? You got to make sure that you don't just give away incentives, and what you don't want is a company to pick you knowing that they're going to come here, but then just bait you into giving them more and more and more and more incentives. We've heard stories of that in the past. So it's making sure you keep the right balance, but making sure you don't put too much of a burden on taxpayers or the workers that are in place. So I think it's important for the government to create structure and to create tailwinds, but not to be the sole reason why an industry is staying here. I think you're watching like the film industry show up, right? There's a very healthy incentive that's been set up, but it's created its own ecosystem. It's a flywheel of success that every year it gets stronger and stronger and stronger and creates tangible jobs, tens of thousands of high-paying quality jobs that are attracted here. And then looking for ways to improve those incentives, right? If you think about, how do you make an industry stickier, right? We want to get people to come here. How do you get them to stay here? How do you get them to continue to invest more and more and more? A lot of that has to do with skilled labor. A lot of that has to do with healthcare in rural communities and outlying areas. A lot of that has to do with the public education system. Right? Those are things that create stickiness to those businesses and industries staying here and allow families to really call Georgia home for extended periods of time.
On the workforce development side and apprenticeships, once you win as governor, will you help us grow apprenticeship readiness programs, push apprenticeships, and help us in the state to get that more skilled worker like we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a time-tested, proven model that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, right? If maybe I'm overly speaking of saying thousands of years, right? It's a model that works. I went to Germany on an economic development trip and went to Mercedes and Porsche and some other places, and they lean into those apprenticeship programs. In fact, they speak very highly and embed labor into their organizations. So looking for ways to replicate that and expand that. I think there's ways to make sure that all 159 counties, people in those counties, have access to it regionally so that they can make that common sense decision for a few years to be able to get back and forth to those training sessions, to be embedded in those labor groups and that whole ecosystem. And I think the state, look, your money's where your mouth is kind of thing, right? Looking for ways to create opportunities and tailwinds and structure around those apprenticeship programs, I think, is a huge start. And by the way, that's what the private sector wants. All these large employers, all these sophisticated manufacturers and warehouses and factories, they want to make sure that labor shows up organized and skilled.
One of the things that we do, that we run into in construction here in the building trades is we're working long hours. A lot of times we spend more time with our brothers and sisters on the job than we do at home. 6-10s, 7 days a week occasionally. I mean, there's a lot of work going on. And so with that, burnout, people get burnt out. Once you get burnt out to a certain point, then you have a totally different issue to where it can be as serious as a mental health crisis. There could be some other signifiers to that to where people self-medicate. What's your theory or your position? Can you help us as a state? Because I feel like our mental health funding is not what it should be with the amount of people that you see nowadays having mental health crises. Do you have a plan to try to, meet everybody where they are and try to help with the mental health? Because it's a growing issue as well.
It is. And everybody listening here today most likely has faced a very serious mental health issue themselves or their family or close network of friends. It's affected all of our lives. And I think there's two things. One, there's funding around how we better fund mental health and behavioral health therapies and treatment, but also the structure of how insurance covers and carries this and building that framework around the state so that whether it's a telehealth appointment that you can have quick access to when you start to feel the wheels come unglued a little bit, or whether or not you can set up on a regular routine therapy session with an in-person, but making sure your insurance is covering that in a way that is meaningful and effective. But you're right. I mean, mental health affects everybody. It affects the rich. It affects the poor. It affects urban and rural and everybody in between. And we've got to make sure that we stay focused because the last thing we want is somebody coming to work carrying an unhealthy burden on their shoulders and not able to share that, right? And especially, look, I know in my world, I feel like I'm supposed to show up every day ready to support my family and to do the things I need to do. But some days are tougher than others, and so you need to make sure you've got somebody to talk to.
Yeah, for sure. And with the stuff that you can buy nowadays over the counter at some of our gas stations and filling stations, you don't know what's in this CBD or whatever they're selling too. So, I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with, being burnt out, self-medicating, trying to just chill. And, for years, construction is still known to be one of the most stressful careers out there is
Yeah.
because of all the hours and then that getting burnt out, and we're too macho to be able to talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm having issues. So it's good to hear that you do have a plan to where you're going to offer some funding and try to get that moving, because we definitely have suicide rates in construction are outrageous. And so we've been combating that for years.
There's addiction, there's mental health, there's family services. There's a lot of stresses and strains that go on, and and there's ebbs and flows in the economics of construction, right? There's booms and busts, and we got to make sure that we have a system, a safety net in place to be able to protect all those.
And then I'm sure you've got your affordable housing plan also, because that's a big issue. We also, here at the Building Trades, we have what we call the Georgia Building Trades Academy, which is where we do apprenticeship readiness on a multi-core curriculum, which is an MC3. And one of the things we find youth in Atlanta, in our area, and we give them a pathway into the trades. It's awesome work, man. I love
That's great.
it. Yeah,
that sounds like God's work.
Yes, it is. It's amazing. And so a lot of the students that we recruit that come in and that we're putting into the trades, while they're going through that pre-apprenticeship, they don't have any housing. So, they're insecure at their housing. They're staying with their cousin, or they're staying with their friend, or they don't have a place to live. So what could you do? What kind of, just 30,000 view of affordable housing are you going to bring to Georgia to where everybody can have somewhere they can lay down at night?
You have to tackle the issue of affordable housing. You've got to look at it from a macro perspective, but also to be granular. Every city's got their own, kind of solutions that they've come up with. I know that Andre Dickens here in Atlanta has really done a great job of figuring out how to create modular, quickly built with wraparound services. I know that we've been in Savannah, and Mayor Van Johnson has done some great work down there with Dundee Cottages and other. And so affordable housing is real. And a lot of that times it doesn't come from living under a bridge. It comes from couch surfing, as you mentioned. Sometimes those families have kids trying to be transients between one family member to the next family member. But I think, living wage is an important part of that storyline too. But also, we've got $17 billion in our state's rainy day fund. That's a lot.
Yeah.
In my world, that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost half of our state's annual budget. I think it's time to start investing some of that $17 billion back into hardworking Georgians that just need that one little jump start, right? I'm calling it my jump start fund. $1.7 billion of the $17 billion, 10% of it, to plug into affordable child care opportunities by better funding the CAPS program, better funding the TANF program to wrap our hands around those families that need a little bit of help with their utility bills or need some transportation costs. Being able to lower affordable housing, or be able to introduce and stand up more affordable housing opportunities, but also to expand Medicaid. We've got over 1 million Georgians that don't have health insurance. And it's not like they're not going to get sick or have to go to the hospital. They're just going to show up and have to bankrupt themselves just because they've got something that somebody else pays a deductible for.
Yeah, we see that too. That's awesome, because to actually have to hear you say child care and you've got a plan for that, that really hits home in construction. Also, as I was talking earlier, some of the students that come through, and even our apprentices as they come through, daycares don't open until 6 o'clock, most of them. Well, our shifts are starting earlier. Right. Some shifts start at 5:30, but most of them are at 6 a.m.
Which means you're rolling at 3:30 just to get there on
That's
time.
right. And then you're late to work because you can't drop your kid off at daycare. If you're a single dad or a single mother, and a single parent, you can't drop your child off because daycares, a lot of them don't open until 6 a.m. So that whole piece for construction, my brother Steve Langley with Smart, he's got an awesome plan that he's rolling out over there at Sheet Metal, where he's trying to offer child care, and he's got a good plan for that. But that's another conversation for a different day, because I don't know all of his ins and outs. He's been working on it a while. But to hear you say that you have a plan, that's good, because we need that. That's everything you're saying, man. You're checking all the boxes, and what's so good about it is you're genuine. Like, you're not your normal politician. You're sitting here, you're genuine, you care about Georgia, and I think everybody can tell with your work ethic, what you explained earlier, that you're the real deal and you really want to make a difference. You're not just playing gubernatorial candidate. You really want to win and change this state for the better. and that's a good breath of fresh air for us.
I appreciate that perspective. I mean, look, I'm not doing this because I want to see my name in lights. I've played professional baseball. I've been the lieutenant governor. I've been on CNN 8,000 times. I've seen my name in lights. I'm doing this because I want to help more Georgians see their better days. Yeah. And I think that's the opportunity that we have in front of us is take this state government, take this $37 billion budget and angle it towards those folks that need it the most, that need that one little help, that one little startup to get them over the hump and to be able to have that long-lasting career. I mean, just think about it. How many people are listening that can't go to work because they just can't afford childcare? It's an even trade-off. I'm going to pay as much in childcare as I am going to make, so I'd rather take care of my kid. Be able to figure out how to better fund that CAPS program. We only put $68 million in there as a state, yet we're sitting on $17 billion, right? Mm-hmm. Let's put $168 million. Let's put a number that's tangible in there to scale it up. We've got kids showing up at schools that don't have free or reduced lunches anymore because Donald Trump wanted to give a tax break to a room full of billionaires, and these kids aren't getting, free and reduced lunches anymore. That's the only warm meal they get every day, most likely.
Yeah. So $17 billion sitting in the state surplus.
Yep.
Why do you think that is? Why are they not? Why is it not being used?
Well, I think there's a couple of challenges. One is we've budgeted well and we've economically boomed since the pandemic, right? So I mean, that's the plus side. I think the minus side is that there's a lot of feelings that Donald Trump is running this economy towards on the red line, and it's gonna pull back, which means that if the economy falls and tax collection starts to fall, and there's going to have to backfill some programs. I mean, we're already watching what's going on. The federal government's backing away from so many of their commitments and so many of their programs, and the state's having to step up. But I do think there's an opportunity to invest at least 10% of those dollars back into Georgians, and that's kind of the rising tide that lifts all boats. Just imagine that person that could get into that apprenticeship program if they're able to get that health care, if they were able to be able to close that skill gap. Let's think about somebody who wants to open a business and be productive and be able to have access to capital. Those are the things that really that's the long game to building a state.
Awesome. If you were sitting in front of a 20-year-old, I know you said you had your boys, but you were sitting in front of them, 20-year-old, trying to decide between college and the trades. Tell me what that looks like. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think it's just to make an honest soul assessment, right? Where do you see happy at? Where do you find the most joy? Working with your hands, working with your mind, working with your creativity and your tenacity and grit, or do you see yourself taking more of a professional track, right? I faced that same decision at 21, or I think I was 20. I got drafted by the Marlins. I was a junior in college at Georgia Tech, and the draft came, and I didn't get tens of millions of dollars. I got a check, but I didn't get tens of millions. I wasn't going to retire on my signing bonus, and I made the decision to go sign. I was ready to move on, and my trade was baseball, and I loved every minute of it. It's who I am. It's still to this day, I don't go 10 minutes without talking about something that happened in my life, and it made me who I am. And so that was the right move for me. I've got one son who's in law school. He's decided to graduate from college, and he wants to be a professional in the law school. I've got one that is at Georgia Tech, and he's on the football team, and he's got an AI startup business, and he's chomping at the bit to go start that business and get it off the ground. So I think it's up to everybody but it's about opportunities. I think that's what we want to create. This isn't one size fits all. Everybody should have those opportunities and run for it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today. Like I said, one of the things that I get, the feel I get, is you're instilling hope again in Georgia. And with your ideas and with what you want to do, there's a sense of hope it's really good to see that we don't have a politician, that we have a person that's coming in here that truly cares about people and wants to serve and do good things for Georgians all across the state. So I can't tell you enough. I appreciate you. Appreciate your friendship and everything you're doing and what you've done for the state so far, and let's go win this election.
Well, I appreciate your words of encouragement, and it's an awesome opportunity to talk to folks that are really, truly bringing Georgia alive every day. So thanks for the opportunity. I look forward to working hard and meeting as many folks as I can.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.